friends of Volumetrica and trading, good morning from Eduardo Buratini. Welcome to video analysis of the S and AMP wink with tongue sticking out 500 in NASDAQ for September 4th, 2025. So, the situation is relatively simple today, or rather, straightforward. It's straightforward because we're coming off two sessions right after Labor Day, where the American indices underwent a pretty deep test. Referring back to the previous analysis video I posted, it was confirmed that there was indeed further pressure on the old support level at 6,460, which resulted in a test, let's say, in the 6,400 area, about 20 points lower, or more precisely, at 6,370, so 30 points lower. Then we saw the market regain strength completely, going back to touch what were historical support levels, coming from previous value areas that were still naked, still untouched. And from there, especially during the September 2nd trading session, a rather significantly substantial upward movement was indeed generated, leading to a notable increase. This movement was somehow reinforced yesterday because we can see that the market had a small retracement, let's say, compared to this upward move, but it ended up resting not only on a high volume node of the composite profile, but also creating a mini swing distribution, which was significantly reinforced by a block of both positive and negative deltas. Actually, the fact that both positive and negative deltas are so close together is really, really important. They were created right during the upward move, okay? And as it happens, this level was retested precisely during the evening part of yesterday's session. That was basically the most significant retracement compared to this upward movement. And from both a volume structure perspective and, let's say, from an order flow dynamic point of view, this is the most important element that we'll need today for our analysis. Why? Because not only did this move, let's say, this retracement, hit, react, and bring the price back up to practically the previous swing high, but it was also a retracement that landed right on the VWAP of this swing. We're still talking about a selected swing here, one that goes from the high to the low of this move. So it's not a time-based VWAP. It's specifically the VWAP of the swing itself, which in these situations is particularly significant. So we have an S and AMP wink with tongue sticking out that definitely seems to have resumed its upward trend. Why do I say seems? Because, after all, we still haven't fully recovered the 6,460 area, which was a former support that was broken and now is right in front of us as resistance. Now, a broken support doesn't automatically become resistance just because it was breached. In this sense, the level was previously a support and is now a resistance because, in fact, it sets the, let's say, the new boundary for re-entering this volume distribution. So, basically, it's as if the price has changed its acceptance zone. It went to trade elsewhere, did what it needed to do, and now, to get back in, there clearly needs to be a significant volume effort. That's exactly what we should be watching for in today's session as it unfolds, because it's this reacceptance within the 6,460 area that could provide the push to retrade all the levels of the previous distribution. So it could go back to test, let's say, its next physiological level, which is 6,500, and then possibly see if there will be enough momentum to reach new highs. Given the situation I was just explaining, this is definitely a price that's coming back up to this potential resistance at 6,460 under the best possible conditions. because it has really created a solid structure, both in terms of volume and absorption, which has even, so to speak, allowed it to cross back through this previous acceptance zone, building balance within it. So, in effect, it's as if the price has come back to correct areas where there hadn't yet been a consolidated volume structure. Let's put it that way. So, it's definitely a price that's reaching a resistance level under the best possible conditions of strength. So, it's important to monitor throughout the day how this 6,460 area is actually handled, and then the 6,500 area after that. In any case, it's a situation that leaves me with a relatively bullish outlook, okay? If we do end up having, let's say, some trouble breaking through this area on the first try, there's still, for now, this level that comes from a swing perspective, which gave us this 6,425 to 6,420 zone. Let's give ourselves a buffer of about 5 to 7 points as a possible support level, in case this attempt to re-enter the old distribution fails. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. And there's also, the NASDAQ is clearly giving us a pretty similar situation. Actually, in this case, I'd say it's practically identical because here the area in question is the one around. So here too, as you can see, we have this movement that brought us. Let's just let the chart reload for a moment. It basically brought us back to what had been the natural resistance level, let's say at 23,450, which was broken to the downside. And then after this move, which I'm about to show you as soon as, here it is, as soon as the chart reloads. This one right here. 23,450 broken, breached, retested, right to the tick, I would say. Those old value areas that are still worth considering. And then it went on to create, well, this situation here. So here too, we got a recovery swing that basically covered the whole area, with the potential for a move back in. See here as well, the precision right at MMH 23,450. The price made a first test above, a test that led to a retracement. Pay attention to this retracement. We have the volume profile area, which is much less defined compared to the S and AMP wink with tongue sticking out 500. But here we still have the VWAP of this swing, which, as we mentioned earlier in this specific case, is particularly important to keep in mind. We also have a fairly significant volume level, because here it shows us that at the moment it was left. So when this, let's say, this small range was created, we exited the range with bullish pressure that was pulled back late yesterday in the session, basically returning toward the central part of the distribution. So here, there was definitely a bit more acceptance in the lower part. In fact, if we look at the shape of the distribution area, we're basically already at its point of equilibrium here. Let's say the area with the highest volumes in the entire partial zone. So technically, in terms of support, this area will tend to, well, it will definitely create some friction for sure, but it tends to be less resistance compared to the S and AMP wink with tongue sticking out, which instead actually has to break through the area in order to fully claim that it has returned to an old acceptance zone. On the other hand, here we also have this dynamic, this retracement that, despite coming from different factors, still confirms strength. The most important area of the NASDAQ to keep an eye on is this one between 23,480 and 23,500, a buffer of 20 points. Because if we break through here, we re-enter last week's old value area, And in the upper part of the volume profile distribution, there isn't going on. So 23,850 is, 23,480 to 23,500 is the level to keep most in mind. If that fails, here too we have the possibility of a recovery, and potentially the level where you can expect a supportive reaction is around 23,320 to 23,300. And, possibly, well, here too we can consider a scenario where a bullish move is more likely. Obviously, all these levels, all these considerations are intended purely for educational purposes and are not an incentive to take a position nor a solicitation for public investment. Thank you all for your attention, and I'll see you later with the Volumetric trading clients for the usual VLIF. Best regards to everyone, and happy trading.